Okay, really interesting discussion there. We're going to steam on ahead because we are on a roll. It's great to have you all in the room. We're getting towards the end of the afternoon, so we're going to keep going. And here's the thing. We have heard about design hotels. We've heard about boutique hotels. But there's now one category of hotels that seem to be doing really well, and they are called lifestyle hotels, or somebody has called them lifestyle hotels. And to talk about their own two ventures in lifestyle hotels, please welcome on stage James Stuart, the director of the Social House in Nairobi, and Paul Mack, Group Managing Director of the Latitude Hotel Group. Thanks. Good luck.
Okay. Oh, it does work. Welcome. I know it's getting late on the second day, so we'll try and spice things up a bit. You'll be interested to know that Paul and I have absolutely no clue what we're talking about. At least when it comes to this subject. I'm sure you've got knowledge on other subjects, but lifestyle hotels is something of a mystery to us. And yet, this label has been applied to the hotels that we both work for. In Paul's case, the Latitude Hotels Group, which is now operating in Malawi, in Lilongwe, in Lusaka, and in Kampala. Mm-hmm. And maybe Paul can expand on that as we move forward. And I work with the Social House in Nairobi. We're a startup, we're a baby. There's only one of us, but hopefully there'll be more of us soon. But this lifestyle label has been applied quite regularly to our hotels, and so it's rather amusing that we, as lifestyle hotels, don't actually know kind of what we are, I guess. So to enlighten ourselves, we delved deep into the world of lifestyle hospitality, and we've both come up with definitions of what it means. This is mine, which came from the Boutique and Lifestyle Lodging Association, and it's as follows. Lifestyle hotels are the next generation of boutique hotels, which is slightly worrying because I think we're all still debating what a boutique hotel is, but hold that thought. So the next generation of boutique hotels. I'm going to read this rather fast because it's a bit confusing. Driven by the chains, they borrow the best elements of the boutiques, small, intimate, and modern, and throw in advantages only a chain can offer, like loyalty, perks, consistency, and economies of scale. As a result, lifestyle hotels are generally more affordable and accessible than boutiques. If you didn't understand much of that, neither did I. But certainly it doesn't seem to apply to the hotel that I've been working with for the last 4 years in Nairobi. Paul, what did you uncover? Okay. You need one of oh, you've got one of those.
I've got one, if everyone can hear me. Thank you, James. I think you're right, and people do get terribly bogged down in nomenclature as to what's a boutique, what's a lifestyle. And there was another Stuart, it wasn't James Stuart, it was Justice Potter Stuart in 1964, a US Supreme Court judge, who was asked to opine on whether a movie was in fact pornographic. And he said in the Supreme Court, he said, I'm not today going to try and define what pornography is, but I know it when I see it. And I think from our perspective,
I think this is meant for later.
But I think it's terribly important from a lifestyle hotel and a boutique hotel. It's hard to put your finger on really where the touch points are that makes it. Is it a boutique hotel? Is it a lifestyle hotel? And frankly, does it really matter? I think it's more important to turn it upside down and say, well, let's deconstruct it. What are we trying to achieve here? And I don't know if the slides can go back up, please, with the photo roll of the premises, our 3 hotels so far. But what we've tried to do is we've tried to appeal to what we call, and it's slightly hackneyed and I apologize, but we call it work, stay, play, which is, of course, we have to offer what one would typically regard in a boutique hotel, which for me means small, intimate, and levels of service. but you then broaden that footprint to add the other touch points and other functionality. Gyms, spas, co-working space, lifestyle, private members clubs, and all of the associated paraphernalia that can be bundled on top of a boutique hotel. So I'm with you that people say, well, a lifestyle hotel is a boutique hotel chain. Well, a boutique hotel chain is possibly an oxymoron. What you can't have is copy-paste, because you lose all of the uniqueness. But what you need to do is find the balance between having a unique property and having a cost-effective property, because ultimately you've still got to fund these properties, you've got to look at your GOP. So from that perspective, it's broadening the boutique into a series of other service deliverables that are available that people want for, quote, lifestyle, whatever that is. So they can turn up, they can have the gyms, they can have the spas, they can co-work, they can put all of those together. That's what I would regard as a boutique lifestyle hotel on that basis. And I think you're right, you could argue it all day long, but my view is, well, does it really matter? Ultimately, what matters is the service delivery. You want to excite your customers, you want to delight your customers, and frankly, you don't want to upset them too often, because you can be a little bit quirky, and you won't have necessarily the loyalty programs, you won't necessarily have the consistency of service, which is copy-paste, you have idiosyncrasies. And I think that's really, really important with boutique hotels. And I think, finally, because I'm waffling on, I do apologize, but I think if you look at what the large chains and the large groups are trying to do by consistently adding in more stratification of boutique hotels and people, Kimpton was probably the first transaction in the space a few years ago, before everyone tried to realize they needed to differentiate the offering and the brand. And what I can see happening is the gap narrowing between the sub-brands that the large chains and groups have got and the boutiques, and I can see that narrowing as we go forward.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'd sort of go back one step before that, because if we're talking about lifestyle, the question is, whose life are we talking about, hence the title of this session. And for us, when we kicked off the Social House, and in fact when I was working on another project in Hong Kong, which became the Upper House, which is part of Swire Hotels, which some of you may know, it was really, and that's been described as a lifestyle brand, it was really about defining the lifestyles of a particular group of customers whose needs were not being met. So if we look at Nairobi going back 4 years, we identified an increasingly large and increasingly wealthy group of individuals that we called the lesser spotted adventurers, coming from Kenya. And these people were adventurous, they're open-minded, they seek informality over the rather obsequious style of 19th century European service delivery. Many of them are entrepreneurs. They certainly know what great service is, what great food, what great wine is, but they don't want it delivered in the same way. They seek change, they seek surprise, and very importantly, hence the name The Social House, they are extremely communal and highly sociable. And we used a business model called brand-centered management, which essentially puts the culture, and this comes back to Paul's point about the delivery of service not perhaps always being as uniform as with the larger groups. But brand-centered management puts or translates the brand first and foremost into organizational culture. So all of our recruitment, our coaching, our performance management systems are entirely based around attributes that reflect back to the type of brand we're trying to build for the type of customers we're trying to serve. And I'd say, and this is where it comes back into what Paul was saying, this really raises an issue of, if you want to be, one of the things we've tried very hard to be is authentic, and I won't try and unravel that right now. But the idea is, if we find people who are right for our brand, then to some extent, let them free. Don't straitjacket them, particularly in a place like Kenya or Uganda, Zambia, where you have very effervescent, charming, naturally vivacious people. You don't want to straitjacket people like that. But sure, they can be themselves. Sure, you know, and I think it's an essential element of lifestyle hospitality. But how do you balance that with the typical underpins, the threshold needs of being professional, knowledgeable, speedy, courteous? You know, you don't want people thinking you're being frivolous. Informality is one thing. Frivolity and inefficiency is not a good bedfellow. So I think for us, those are important things. And I was going to throw this back to Paul, because we have one hotel. Paul has 3 at the moment, and I believe maybe more coming. How do you then, because one of the things I get asked is, well, how do you scale that? How do you keep that authenticity and, to some extent, question the lack of systematization? And how do you grow that? So you've got some experience of that, Paul. How have you done it?
It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. Next question. I think you're right. Firstly, Tanya, could we have the slides running again, please? I think it's important just to see the photos of the 3 properties, and they're in order, and you will see that they have a type of common theme to them, but they're all different. And what we're trying to do, and I think this talks to your question, is I want people to go into their hotels and say, I've been to Lasaka. They turn up in Kampala, and they walk in and go, yeah, this is definitely it feels, there's some DNA here, which feels like a Latitude, but it's different to the last one. So it's finding that, and it's an awful expression, I hate it, but there is a core DNA. And I think for the boutiques and the lifestyles, you need to grab that. Now, whether that's a brand, whether it's a statement in terms of how you position the thinking of how you want to present to your guests, and that's the core. And then you add on to that all of the local artisanal and local cultural elements, so that each one is talking to its local community. And I think that's really, really important. And I see that being the way to scale in a way that doesn't look like copy-paste, going back to the boutique chain oxymoron.
But if I may, let's take the interiors, for example. And for the large groups, of course, not everything is always the same, but there's a good, this, to me, an oxymoron is brand standards, because brands aren't about standards, they're about differentiation. But if you're starting by reflecting the locale in your designs, for example, does that mean you go in with a completely fresh design process, obviously underpinned by the brand DNA, but underpinned by your attitude? And does that not add a lot more time and a lot more cost each time you do it?
Well, we do it all in-house, which makes it,
right,
I think, a lot quicker to market. So it takes
you design in-house?
Yeah, so we design in-house, we do the drawings in-house, we do the interior design, the layout in-house. Being a banker, needless to say, that's my core strength, as you can imagine, interior design. And so from that perspective, we do have one common thread. We're very, very big, and this goes back to the DNA, on CSR. And a lot of people use CSR as a throwaway on an ongoing basis. We produce our own CSR reports, which are measurable metrics on the difference we actually try and make, whether it's in FDI, whether it's in employment empowerment, or whatever, in each territory we're in. And again, that sounds trite, but it's very important, and it sounds big corporate, but it's terribly, terribly important. One commonality we've got through all of the hotels is we funded a women's cooperative in Malawi, HIV widows and orphans, and we uptrained them, upskilled them to recycle materials, all sorts of weird and wonderful materials.
Can we see some of their work here?
Yeah,
is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of it here. And of course, this is one slide that doesn't have any of it. But there you go. So they are, they're bits of old bits of old reef and stone. All the tumbled chandeliers, tumbled glass chandeliers, the statement pieces, the lanterns you can see there, these are all made out of upcycled and recycled materials on an ongoing basis. And the ladies have got very good with angle grinders and arc welders, and we use old machinery, which we dismantle, and we turn into screens, panels, doors, frames, and similar. And we use those across all of our hotels. So that's a type of common theme. So you walk in, and there are, I wouldn't call them signature pieces, but there are footprint pieces in each of them. And you go, oh yeah, I saw that in Malawi, I saw that in Zambia.
No brand standards. You don't have to have the same
no.
art piece and the same colour scheme everywhere.
On the contrary, they're all different. They're deliberately different. We bring in local artisans from each territory. So we've got Ugandan artists who collaborated on a number of projects and builds and design installations in Kampala, ditto in Zambia, ditto in Malawi. So we're trying to keep a common theme, but keep a twist going. Yeah. And that's how I see the scalability of lifestyle.
Okay. I'm just going to ask a couple more, or make a couple of observations and one more key question. But if you've got questions, please hold them. We'll come to it in a moment. A simple question. A lot of, and this isn't just in Kenya or Uganda, Malawi, Zambia, why do you think it is that a lot of lifestyle hotels have floated to the top of, for example, TripAdvisor ratings so quickly? I mean, given their algorithms, it takes a while. What is it that the customers of such properties, and I would say it goes beyond satisfaction. I've always thought that, you know, if you spent a night with someone, your wife or your boyfriend or whomever, and you woke up the next morning and said, how was it for you? And someone said, well, I was satisfied. You wouldn't feel that that was a great reflection of your performance in bed. Likewise, I don't think hotels should be referring to customers being satisfied. But what is it? Because I see this quite a bit with the social houses, that people, I mean, some people really dislike it because it's not them. But then at the other extreme, you've got people who adore it. And I know the same is true with Latitude. So where does that come from?
Look, it's horses for courses, that there are a number of people who like to travel with the certainty. It's buying the quarter pounder with cheese. You know, in theory, that you've got the common standard across the world. It's a franchise, it's quality control. You turn up, you know exactly what you get. With a number of the large hotels, they're traveling into a new territory. If they're an international traveler, they don't know what they're going to see. They have the certainty of going into a large hotel chain that they've got a loyalty card with.
Especially in Africa, perhaps.
Exactly. So you get the large, historically large hotels from the chains with the loyalty programs, and people feel safe and secure because they can get the airport transfer, they can get to the hotel, and they're safe. And then they can venture out into big bad Africa.
But you don't offer that.
We do.
So why are they coming to you if it's...
I think there's a dichotomy. You've either got those people, or you've got the people, I wouldn't necessarily call them the adventurous, but adventurous is one word you can use. It's the curious. And it's people who say, I know there are the large hotels, nice, shiny five-star hotels against whom we compete, and it's like the social house. It's very similar. But I want something different. I want to be in a hotel that I can't wake up and think, am I in Melbourne, am I in LA, am I in London? Fine, if that's what you want, that's marvelous. From our perspective, we are making sure that they wake up and go, yeah, I'm definitely in Zambia, or I'm definitely in Uganda, or I'm definitely in Malawi. And I think it's an either or, and I don't think there's really a middle house, if you pardon that, as opposed to an upper house.
There is actually a middle house by Swire in Shanghai, but that's another story.
But we'll park that one pro tem. But I think there is a dichotomy. It's always going to be there. And I think there is ample room for both of them to be very, very comfortable bedfellows.
I know time's up, but I just want to ask you, this is for Paul to answer, because we're not ready for outside investment yet. We're still tweaking our little model. if an investor comes to you as the opportunity of going with something a bit more mainstream, what are you offering investors in your business with something that's really quite untried in this part of the world?
Yeah, again, a great question. When we started this, I've got no personal affinity for owning the walls on the hotels, and asset light is the theme. We're asset heavy. We own all of these properties. We built them, we develop them, we own the land. We own the OpCo, we own the PropCo, we own the management company. So we're quite balance sheet heavy. We did that deliberately for proof of concept, because you're right, when we started this and said we're going to build these boutique lifestyle hotels in Malawi, Zambia, most people looked at us and said, you're batshit mad in terms of what you're doing. So we needed to fund this ourselves to prove that concept. We've proved the concept, as you say. They're trading very well. They're at the top of their respective peer relatives. And we're now moving into a new phase for Latitude, which is we're going to partner, we're going to JV, we're going to go asset light. We've proven what we need to do, and we now want to do this and partner with other people.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time. Sorry about we've run out of time. We haven't run out of time.
I think this is an interesting topic, so we have time. Can you just pick up? And yes, if there are questions from the audience, that would be interesting. I want to just put this to you, actually. I wondered if lifestyle hotels are about taking, it's almost tautology, taking your lifestyle from home to wherever you are. So digital nomads, which was the big thing they talked about, that's what they're doing. They're going into a hotel, and yes, they do want a workspace, but they want it to be somewhere that's interesting and exciting. There was that actually going on in that island off Kenya, wasn't there, during COVID? Did you know about this? There was just island off Kenya, in
Lamu?
Lamu, Malindi, the whole area.
Yes. So is it tapping into that a little bit?
I think it is. Certainly, I'll speak for the Social House. I think it's looking at the kinds of lives these people lead, not just at home, but in their home market. So if they're coming from London, there's a certain way they live their life. There's a certain restaurant set they might be interested in. There's a certain people they hang out with. They're in certain jobs. They have certain attitudes towards the way they do their jobs. And they bring that, and they want a place where that can be, where they feel comfortable being that way. But what they also want, and this is really important, is to feel that they are in the market that they're in. And one of the things that we did to make that happen was actually we turned the whole the whole planning process upside down. We started by saying our key customers are going to be locals. We have 4 restaurants in an 83-room hotel to cater for locals. We weren't ignoring overseas guests, but the idea was that by actually enticing locals to be there and being very much the social rhythm of the place, that when an overseas guest walks in from Copenhagen or New York, they're walking into somewhere that they feel at ease with because they recognize the sort of the ambience and the attitude, but the locals give it that strong Kenyan flavor.
So it's not corporate. It's not corporate.
Oh, it's not corporate. Yeah. I mean, a very strong part of what our brand is our Kenyan customers.
Yeah.
I'd answer in a slightly different way, which is one of our service delivery lines, which sounds terribly corporate, is we've built discrete co-working space. And that's open plan, Apple-style benches, they're small meeting pods, they're full-scale offices. And we did that for 2 reasons. One is we saw a demand for it, or we thought we saw a demand for it. So we went in very early in, for example, Zambia, and watched this thing empty with tumbleweed rolling through it for about 12 months until the penny started to drop. But I think the other one was from the overall look and feel. You go to so many hotels and you find the lobby and the bars of people sitting there with a laptop. And you go, this isn't what a bar's meant to be. And again, we started upside down. Big open social areas, mixing pot, melting pot of whom our guests and customers are. So we have governments, NGOs, embassies, DFIs, adventurers, gun runners, explorers, adventurers, mercenaries, Yeah, this is Africa.
Yeah.
Everyone's in, and you've got a big melting pot. And you don't want people sitting around with a laptop. You want people mixing, interacting, networking, enjoying themselves. So give them a fully functioning space to do that themselves. And talking to your digital nomads, we've had so many people move in full-time on a lifestyle work balance, and they just turn up 3 days a week, and they go in and they sit down, have a cappuccino by the pool, then they go off and have some meetings, and they use the co-working space. So there is definitely a post-COVID trend as well, which also talks into the ongoing trend of the digital nomad. And I think it's important that we recognize that that's there and answer that demand.
Very good. It's a really interesting area. I think that, as you said, boutique hotels, are they running out of steam and therefore, and not reflecting people's lives anymore, or not reflecting how life has changed, society has changed recently? I don't know. Are there questions? Any points that want to be made from? Yes, thank you. Can we take the mic to this gentleman here, please?
So my question is the lifestyle hospitality will be the future of hospitality? Thanks.
It has a future. I don't think it's the future. I mean, again, it partly depends what your definition of lifestyle is, but if you take the hotel that I represent in Nairobi, it's too expensive to be the future of hospitality for everybody. We're priced at the top end of the market. I think Latitude is similarly priced. If we deconstruct lifestyle to be a set of authentic, less formal experiences that reflect, as you suggested, the lifestyles that they live at home, then I think you can see lifestyle hotels as a definition, maybe not lifestyle hotels, but you can see that lifestyle element creeping in every level of the market. Budget, limited service, because what you're looking at is not so much what the product is, but the starting point of whose life are we talking about, and what do they need, what are they not being given, and what can we provide that helps us stand apart. So I think, in a way, if you just put the moniker of lifestyle hotels to one side, the notion of being clearer about a lifestyle rather than obsessing about a boutique label, a design label, certainly should be the future of the industry.
Yeah, I think that's right. All you have to do, and again, look at the large chains and the large groups. What are they doing? They're trying to differentiate their platform offering into an increasingly large series of brands. And if you look at the big three, they've got 110 brands between them. I counted them a little while ago and are clearly a bored moment. And you've got 110 brands and growing. Why are they doing that? Because they're trying to segment, they're trying to differentiate, they're trying to work out that they don't have a homogeneous client or customer or guest. They have different people with different fears, excitement, aspirations, desires, anxieties, and you need to steer a path. So I think answering your question, I think there's room for all of them going forward. That's not a cop-out. I think they are all going to move ahead. And the lifestyle hotel, I can see as growing in its importance, but it's not an either-or. I can see them all running together.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. You kind of wonder what's next. Is it the life-changing hotel? Or, in this evolution, what happens?
No, according to Skift, it's the Transformation Hotel.
The Transformation Hotel,
right?
exactly, yes. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed.